For the last several months, South Africans have taken to the streets in different provinces to protest against foreign African migrants in South Africa. The debate on the internet has kept growing. One side accuses South Africans of being xenophobic. The other argues that South Africans are simply defending their jobs, housing, and public services. But behind all the attacks, insults, and emotional reactions lies an even bigger question. Why has the relationship between South Africa and the rest of Africa become so sour? The dream for Pan-African solidarity has continued to crack under the weight of national economics, borders, history, and politics. And this is not just about the protests in South Africa or any political party. Many Africans feel that South Africans have forgotten those who stood with them to overcome apartheid. And South Africans feel they have, for decades, carried the burdens that no other African country has ever known. But who is right? First, let's look at the liberation date. For decades, the story that South Africa was not left to fight alone during apartheid has united much of Africa. Countries including Zambia, Tanzania, Angola, Mozambique, and many more hosted training facilities and political offices for South Africa's liberation fighters. Others led fundraising campaigns or sacrificed trade opportunities with EU countries that supported the apartheid rule. That history consequently became part of Africa's shared identity. And that explains why many people say South Africans are ungrateful whenever attacks on African migrants occur. But South Africans would rather believe that history should not be used as a permanent invoice. They say that apartheid ended over 30 years ago, and an entire generation has grown up with almost no memory of such events. And to them, South Africa has contributed enormously to the rest of Africa through peacekeeping missions, investments in companies operating across Africa, such as MTN, Stanbic Bank, and MultiChoice. Hospitals serving foreign nationals and universities are open to thousands of African students. And the South African economy has attracted millions seeking better employment and investment opportunities. To South Africans, whatever historical debt existed has long been paid, and not through a single act, but decades of consistent regional political and economic leadership. And probably, this explains why the debate about gratitude is never granted ears. One side argues for historical sacrifices, and the other looks at modern-day contributions. Number 2, South Africa is a victim of its own success. But think about this. Compared with the rest of Africa, South Africa has almost larger cities with more modern infrastructure and a more diversified economy. That's a big pull factor, as economists would say, that even during times of hardship and economic crisis, South Africa remains the region's destination for migrants, entrepreneurs, professionals, researchers, and job seekers. Because people move to where opportunities exist. And that's something that's not unique to Africa. Mexicans move to the US, Poles, Serbians, Slovaks move to Norway, Sweden, Germany, and Malaysians, Indonesians move to Singapore. The challenge for South Africa is that South Africans feel migration is growing much faster than opportunity, housing, healthcare, and employment. And in many communities with shortage of such amenities, competition fuels resentment towards migrants. Number 3, Pan-Africanism is dead. The forefathers of African independence, such as Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, and Kenneth Kaunda, had imagined a continent without borders but a shared identity. This is where Africans would build together and trade with one another. But the reality today is something different. And as Europeans enjoy seamless travel and access to opportunity among countries in the European Union, everyday African governments continue to enforce stricter migration laws, deport undocumented migrants, and tighten entry visa requirements for African travelers. South Africa is not the only country battling the migration question. Other countries such as Nigeria, Ethiopia, Ghana, and Kenya have distinctively encountered tensions and debates over immigration policy at different times. And given the unending conflicts in certain regions, countries like Uganda, Rwanda, Sudan are silently struggling with refugee populations. When migration starts to affect jobs and local politics, the story will always be different. Despite that, many Africans passionately align with the continental unity and solidarity. So Pan-Africanism is not dead. And in the case of South Africa, the issue is not that South Africans are not grateful or that migrants should stop coming. It's about Africa building a continent where migration is a choice, not a necessity. A continent where development and opportunity are spread more evenly.